Hi, it's Dwyer, GamblersAdvisory.com, here with some thoughts on a fight that was announced earlier today. Floyd Mayweather against Victor Ortiz for the welterweight championship at 147 pounds. Now, before I go further, just remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. I think this is a great fight. Longtime subscribers know that these are two of my favorite fighters. I called Victor Ortiz an uncrowned champion when he was a lesser-known contender at 140. Ortiz, of course, has gone on to bigger and better things, recently winning the welterweight title at 147 by beating Andre Berto, and it's the way he beat Berto, knocking Berto down, being aggressive for 12 rounds, that turned a lot of heads. I believe Ortiz has a puncher's chance in this fight. Understand that Ortiz hits harder, in my opinion, than Floyd Mayweather, or Manny Pacquiao for that matter. Ortiz has literally one punch knockout power. He can hit a guy and literally knock that guy unconscious with one punch. And he actually, in this fight, in my opinion, actually has the foot speed advantage on Floyd Mayweather. Ortiz is a great athlete, and he's interesting. People know that I'm normally a skeptic of people who are inverted. In other words, if you right-handed, but you fight out of a southpaw stance, I usually feel that that leaves a fighter tangled. In other words, just like you have a dominant hand, I believe you have a dominant foot. And what I've found is that these inverted guys who are either lefty fighting righty or righties fighting lefty invariably don't move around the ring as well as their opponents, right? And I'll give you some names. Miguel Cotto. I don't think Cotto moved around the ring as well as his opponents have. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Boxing Hall of Famer. If you look at Hagler's game really wasn't movement, right? If you look at his fight against Sugar Ray Leonard, you're going to see that Leonard moved much better than he did. Chad Dawson. I think an argument can be made that Chad Dawson, when he fought Jean Pascal, looked like he was carrying around luggage in the ring. It was actually surprising to see, because, of course, Dawson is inverted. But oddly enough, and this is just one of those flukes, oddly enough, Victor Ortiz is that rare inverted fighter where his left is actually his power hand, right? He's not a righty who's inverted so that he could have his dominant right hand out front. Rather, his left is actually his dominant hand. He's one of those guys who would, if he played baseball, sign autographs with his right hand while batting left-handed. Now, if you're an Ortiz fan and you want to know the case for Ortiz to win this fight, how can he do it? I would say take a look at Ortiz's fight against vicious Vivian Harris. That's prime Ortiz. That's Ortiz at his best. More importantly, that's Ortiz coming in at angles, right? Being two-handed. Ortiz actually, while his left is his, big punch, he also does throw a very mean right hand. And in that Harris fight, what I liked was that Ortiz was away from Harris. Then he would jump in, almost ambush style, he would go up top and also to the body. And his punches were very hard. He wasn't interested in outboxing Vivian Harris. He was interested in outpunching Vivian Harris, right? Big time assault. Harris, who is a gamer, went down multiple times in the fight. He was simply overwhelmed. I believe the way to beat Floyd Mayweather, and I think everyone in boxing can be beaten. I believe the way to beat Floyd Mayweather is to not box him, right? The wrong way to approach Mayweather was the way Shane Mosley did, by standing in front of him and actually allowing Mayweather to deconstruct you. When you're facing a deconstructionist, right, a shrewd counterpuncher who can literally, as the fight goes along, adapt to your style and rhythm, your punch pattern, and actually figure out how to diffuse different parts of your arsenal. So by the 8th or 9th round, he knows what you're going to throw, when you're going to throw it, and how he's going to counter it, and he can literally stand in front of you and just simply outbox you, right? The way to beat a deconstructionist is to literally not engage him. It's to just come in on ambushes. This is why ambush fighters are so successful. This is why Jean Pascal beat Chad Dawson. It's to literally come in on ambushes after hiding your hands, right? It's just like poker, right? You need to have a poker face. You don't want a deconstructionist to actually see your code so he could decipher it. You actually need to be outside of his range. Then you need to jump in and you need to make those interactions count, right? That's what Ortiz did to vicious Vivian Harris. That's what Ortiz needs to do to Floyd Mayweather. Critics of Mayweather will argue that he lost the first fight to Castillo, who came in and took out his body. Victor Ortiz is one of the best body punchers in the sport, right? And Ortiz is the kind of guy who, if he comes in on an attack, he has to come in on an attack on, let's say, some kind of side angle. Then he needs to be quick. He needs to be decisive. He needs to treat it like Pearl Harbor, right? He needs to hit Mayweather in spots where Mayweather's not expecting it. And he needs to do it in a way where Mayweather can't figure out how to block those punches later in the fight. Keep in mind, too, Ortiz is so heavy-handed that it might surprise some people that Ortiz has never lost a match where he didn't knock down his opponent. In fact, his first loss, very questionable. He knocked the guy down, right? The guy got back up. Ortiz knocked the guy down again, got disqualified, right? Because the referee thought he knocked the guy down the second time on the break, right? So Ortiz was dominating that fight. It was a early series of knockdowns. In either the first or second round, Ortiz was dominating that fight. The second time he lost, and this loss was legitimate, he was in a shootout with Marcus Maidana. Maidana actually, went down. Ortiz knocked Maidana down. But as the fight wore on, Maidana was able to knock Ortiz down, and then Ortiz had just had enough. He had been cut. He was bleeding. Ortiz decided to, not continue when given an opportunity to exit that fight. So Ortiz is so heavy-handed, he always knocks down his opponents. He is a guy who it's very hard to survive a fight with him without going down. Andre Berto recently was able to survive 12 rounds with Victor Ortiz. You saw Andre Berto get knocked down. Occasionally, Ortiz will run into a guy who has defensive skills, like Nate Campbell. Ortiz didn't knock down Nate Campbell in that fight, but Ortiz practically pitched a shutout when the two of them fought. Take a look at the scorecards in that fight. Now, Floyd Mayweather, all I could say is, why is Floyd fighting Victor Ortiz? Number one, it's a great payday. Number two, Ortiz is the reigning 147-pound champion. And understand that Floyd Mayweather has a habit of fighting guys who are either unbeaten, like Ricky Hatton, or who are current champions. This is very different than Manny Pacquiao, who seems to fight guys who have recently lost, right? So Mayweather fought De La Hoya when he was the 154-pound champion, right? Manny Pacquiao fought De La Hoya when he didn't have that belt, right? Because he had lost to Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather fought Shane Mosley when he was the welterweight champion. Manny Pacquiao fought Shane Mosley coming off of a loss against Floyd and a draw against Sergio Mora, right? So Floyd Mayweather's back. Why start on a middle floor when you could go to the penthouse? He wants the 147-pound champion. He has him in Victor Ortiz. Now, another reason Floyd is fighting Victor Ortiz, and I believe this is the secret to the fight, is the way Ortiz looked against Lamont Peterson. Right there again. Ortiz knocked Peterson down twice early in that fight. Right? Heavy hands are a beautiful thing in boxing. But then Peterson got off the canvas. You need to take a look at that film, and then outboxed Victor Ortiz for most of that fight. Officially, the fight's in the books as a draw. But understand, if Ortiz knocks Peterson down 2 times in a 10-round fight, then you do the math. If that's a 10-7 round, then somehow, according to the judges, Ortiz was soundly outboxed the remainder of the fight. In the other 9 rounds, Lamont Peterson would have had a 3-round advantage. So Floyd, looking at that film, understands that he is a counterpuncher, just like Lamont Peterson. I'm sure he feels that he can keep the fight in the middle of the ring, like he did against Shane Mosley, and systematically outbox Victor Ortiz. Understand, too, that since Ortiz is in a southpaw stance, he's vulnerable to right hands. In fact, if you look at, a string of Ortiz fights, what you're going to find is take his last fight against Andre Berto. You're going to see that Andre Berto knocked him down in the 6th round with a right hand. Take a look at his fight against Maidana. You'll see that Maidana knocked him down with a right hand. Floyd Mayweather's right hand dominant, right? He throws a pretty mean straight right hand. I think Mayweather, and this is why the fight's very hard to bet, I think Mayweather wants a knockout in this fight. I think Mayweather understands that Ortiz, who was down against Berto, down against Maidana, Ortiz is there to be hit and is vulnerable to straight right hands. I'm not sure if this fight is bettable, but if I were to bet this fight, I would take Ortiz by KO, because I believe that's Ortiz's best chance of winning the fight, straddled against Floyd Mayweather simply to win the fight. Don't sleep on Mayweather's power, right? Understand, when Mayweather beat Oscar De La Hoya wasn't at 147 for the first time in more than half a decade. De La Hoya was actually fully fed at 154, right? But Floyd hit him with enough hard shots to keep De La Hoya honest. Take a look at Floyd's fight against Arturo Gatti. That's a power punching fight. Take a look at Floyd's knockdown of Juan Manuel Marquez early in that fight. Floyd was this close to stopping that fight, right? Take a look at Floyd's knockout of Ricky Hatton. Floyd has power, especially when his opponent's defense isn't top-notch, and Victor Ortiz, despite punching power, has defensive lapses. Let me know what you think. Leave your message for me here on YouTube, and